welcome to the Knitted by Whitney YouTube channel. I am back with another pattern roundup video. This one is a follow-up to a very popular video of mine. A couple of months ago, I shared my list of my top 20 scarves that are not the Sophie scarf, and I have more. Last weekend, we went to a family function and I needed something small to work on. All of my current projects are close to their end. They're all garments. I needed something a little small to work on. So I casted on a little scarf. So this one doesn't have a pattern. I'm coming up with it as I go along. My stitch marker here is just to mark what the right side is versus the wrong side. It's just a garter stitch scarf. Once I block it, it will really stretch out. It'll be really pretty and cozy up against my neck. And it got me thinking, I know there are more of these little scarf patterns out there. I know my appetite was not satisfied simply by the first 20 that I shared with you. So I have another 20 more scarves that are not the Sophie scarf. I want to start off this video by saying I am in no way telling you what you should and should not knit. That is a personal choice that is left up to you. I do, however, want to shine a light on some really lovely scarf patterns that just aren't getting the same level of attention that the Sophie scarf is getting. So this is in no way bashing the Sophie scarf, it's just showing you there are plenty of other little scarf patterns out there that are just as worthy of your attention. I'm going to do this list starting with the smallest size of yarn going up to the largest size of yarn. But my very first pattern has no set gauge and you can use whatever yarn you would like. So let's get into this list of patterns. The first pattern on my list is the Alex scarf by Pernilla Larson of Knitting for Olive, and this pattern has no set gauge. You could use whatever size yarn you would like. You then also choose whatever needle works for the gauge that you want to get. So you could have a really dense gauge, you could have a really open gauge, whatever you would like to have. And then the pattern gives you instructions on what to do for the shaping and the length of the scarf. This one has 3 different sizes, and I love that they all feature this really nice, cozy 2x2 rib texture. I feel like especially if you're wanting to make one of these little scarves as a transitional piece for fall or maybe for spring, which has gone by us at this point. I'm recording this at the end of summer, so we're heading into fall right now. But for either of the transitional seasons, you might just want something really nice and cozy up against your neck, and this ribbed scarf would be really cozy. I also love the colors that they've chosen for the samples, all these beautiful neutral colors. That would go with almost anything in your wardrobe. The next pattern on my list is the Telma scarf by Gregoria Fibers. This one is a lace weight scarf, and looking at the way that it is styled, I think it's meant to be a nod to an ascot, which is typically a piece of menswear, men's accessory wear. But I really feel that the lace pattern of this scarf gives it a feminine touch and kind of gives it a historical touch as well. I love that it's kind of leaning Victorian or Edwardian. I love how it's paired with this really delicate ruffly blouse for a feminine look, but I think it would look equally well styled with either an open button-up shirt or, even if you wanted to get fancy, a little jacket as well and really play into those Regency, Victorian, Edwardian era kind of Regency vibes. The next pattern on my list is Billowy Delight by Amy Alexander, and this pattern uses either mohair or Surrey yarn, and I think it looks super cozy. I love the changeover from these big billowy sections mixed with these really tightly knit sections that really almost give it a ruffled curtain effect, and I mean that in a really good way. I'm thinking of those gorgeous velvet curtains in like a fancy theater or at the opera. They just look so flowy and cozy and rich and luxurious. And I really feel those vibes coming from this particular scarf pattern. The next pattern on my list is the Birthday Wish scarf by Julie Peng. This one is so delicate and pretty. I love those little lace sections that make it look like there are flowers on the scarf. I feel like I mentioned this in a previous video where it reminds me of a rosebud patterned fabric. It's just that little delicate flower motif, and this is done using lace knitting. And I really feel that it gives this otherwise pretty basic scarf a beautiful little detail element. It's such a cute little scarf, and I really love the drapiness that the yarn used in the sample gives it. This is a really nice one if you wanted to create more of a spring scarf and you wanted to use something that had a bit of silk or a little bit of bamboo or viscose just to give it more of that drape effect. I think this would look really great. I apologize for my pronunciation of the next pattern, which is the POCgree scarf by Takiko M. I do apologize if I got any of those words pronounced incorrectly. This is a really cute little striped scarf, and the name POCgree, I hope I pronounced correctly, it says in the pattern description, is a type of Swedish candy. And I have never seen this candy, so I don't associate with that. The striping sequence to me reminds me of a barber pole or a candy cane, that type of diagonal swirly stripe. And I think it's such a cute way to add a bit of extra color into one of these little scarves. So a really popular way of buying yarn is to buy a sock set of yarn. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a sock knitter. So I typically want to use the whole skein by itself, and then I don't really know what to do with the mini skein that comes with it. This is a great pattern to use one of those sock sets because you use the main skein of yarn for the majority of the scarf, and then you can use your little mini skein to do those little contrasting stripes. So it's a great way to use up any of those that are kind of lingering in your stash and you just don't want to make another pair of socks, but you want another little piece that will use both of those yarns in one project. The next pattern on my list is also a tricky named pattern. This is Pumila by Ayano Tanaka. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And from what I've been able to determine online through research and translation, Pumila means get in line in Filipino. So I love that because, as you can tell based on the photo here, this scarf does feature these beautiful, delicate lines that create a visual element to the scarf. And I love that the lines are interrupted by these lovely clusters of stitches. I'm not quite sure if they're baubles or if they are different ways of wrapping your yarn around so that you have this little cluster stitch. It almost looks like a set of berries, and I just think this scarf is particularly delicate and detailed, and it just looks gorgeous. There's even a really fine lacework edging along both sides of the scarf to keep with the delicate nature of the body of the scarf. On the total opposite end of the spectrum of the last pattern, my next pattern is the Menu scarf by Louisa Reckhoff. I hope I pronounced correctly. If not, I do apologize. This is a lovely cabled scarf, and this one looks so cozy and fuzzy. I love that this one is using a sport weight yarn and a lace weight yarn. It looks either mohair or alpaca to really play into the cozy vibes and make this a very soft and squishy scarf. I also love that Menu means kitty in French. This pattern comes in 3 sizes. The smallest one is recommended as a little hair wrap. Then there is a small scarf around your neck as well as a larger shawl option. All 3 look lovely. The next pattern on my list is a free pattern. This is the Sweet Little Scarfette by Amba O'Brien. And this one gives me major 1950s vibes. I could see this on one of the pink ladies in Greece. You've got that great jacket, and then you have this cute little necktie right around your neck. Of course, these typically would have been silk scarves in the 1950s, but I love this translated to knitwear and to yarn. Amba has used a combination of a mohair and a fingering weight yarn, and I feel like the mohair really gives it structure so that it does maintain its shape. And this one's really interesting because this one is knit in the round. So all of your stitching that you're doing, your knitting, is going to be double thick. So you're only knitting a small little piece, but you're going to get double the warmth from that because it is knit in the round and then just flattened out with blocking, which I think is a really cool way of doing it. And the best part about doing that is if it matters to you, that means there's no purling because you're doing all of your stitches as knit stitches and you'll get a beautiful stockinette side on both sides of the scarf. If you love the look of these cute little scarves, but you don't know how to tie them to make them look really aesthetic, this next pattern is for you. This is Le Scarf by Dinah Moore, or Dina Moore. I don't know which one it is. This is a cute little fingering weight scarf that features a little slit in one side of the scarf so that you can feed the tail from the other end through and get a perfectly sitting necktie. I think this is really great for someone who might not know how to do the aesthetic knots, or maybe they've tried different ways and they just don't like the look of the knots or don't like the bulk of a knot right at the front. You can still get that beautiful little crossover effect with this pattern. And this one is also neat because it also includes a contrasting colored edging, which I think gives it another little oomph. The next pattern on my list is Super Bloom by Dawn Barker. How many of us have bought that one special skein of variegated yarn, gotten it home, and realized, what do I do with this? Especially those types of yarns that have intentional pooling. So what I mean by that is that most of the skein of yarn is one color, and then there's a shock of color in another section of the yarn that repeats every so often. And with variegated dyed yarn, there's many different ways that the dye can present, and intentional pooling is one of those ways. Some of the other ways are micro striping, which is similar to intentional pooling. It's just done a little more half and half on the skein so that when you're knitting socks, you get these micro stripes every row. And then of course there's more of like a speckle or a kettle or a tonal dye, which is when your variegated will be more busy and you won't necessarily have these individual colors that jump out. But if you do have a skein of yarn that has intentional pooling and you don't really like the look of it knitted up by itself, or if you're trying to make a garment with it and the pooling is just changing so much when you are knitting the yoke versus the body or versus the sleeves, and you're just not vibing with it, this is a great pattern for those types of yarns because there are these special cluster stitches that you do every time you get to one of those intentional pooling sections. This next pattern, although it looks like it's a little scarf, it's knit up a little differently. This is the Birch Creek Bandana by September Knits. And although this one looks like one of those cute little scarves wrapped around your neck, it's not quite. It's actually a square that you then fold in half and tie around your neck. I first found out about this pattern after watching one of Casey of Young Folk Knits videos where she had just knitted one up, and simply seeing her version wrapped around her neck instantly made me put this pattern on my favorites list. And although it's not technically one of the little skinny rectangular scarves, I wanted to include it in this video because the look gives you the same effect as one of those skinny scarves. You're just knitting it in a different way. And I feel like if you don't want to knit that skinny little scarf, you want something that's going to be a little bigger, a little thicker, this is a really great option. I also love that this one uses two colors, and I feel like if you pick really congruous colors, you're going to get this really lovely effect, almost like a hand woven piece, because of the way that the color work is done on the scarf. Okay, this next pattern is really going to test my pronunciation because it is a Norwegian pattern. It is the Linttur by Wolten, and I apologize profusely for butchering that. I did my best. This is a really fun colorwork pattern. This is one that is part of a series by this particular designer. There are a lot of different variations of this particular colorwork motif that she has done in a variety of accessories, and I think she's also done this in some garments as well. And it's a really striking colorwork pattern, but you have to be careful about what colors you use in order to make that almost V motif really pop. So in the sample colors, they have used a white as their contrasting color, and all of their background colors are really deep jewel tones, and I just love it. It's also knit all in garter stitch. There are also 4 different variations of this motif, so you could choose exactly how you want to design that contrasting color work to really make an impact. So I think this would be such a fun one to play with and create something really beautiful. Maybe this would be something that you could use your scraps for in order to create a beautiful cohesive palette with that really one striking contrast color on top. The next pattern on my list is the only set of 2 patterns on this list. This is the Espresso scarf and double Espresso scarf, both by Katarina Lindhagen. I hope I pronounced correctly. This one, the Espresso scarf, is fingering weight. The double Espresso is DK weight, and I love these. These might have been some of the first little scarf patterns that I found on Ravelry and put on my favorites, other than the Birch bandana. But that one was before I was starting to look for these little scarf patterns. I love these because these are brioche scarves. And yes, I know brioche can be scary if you haven't done it yet. Here's a great opportunity to learn how to do it on a small project with very low stakes. Brioche is the perfect stitch to create something that is really squishy and cozy, perfect for right up against your neck. I really want to make one of these scarves. I haven't yet decided if I want to make the espresso or the double espresso, but both options look super cozy, and I love that they each offer 4 different sizes for each pattern. So you can create a little tiny scarf or a really nice big scarf or 2 sizes in between. The next pattern on my list is Deary by Martha Wissing. I really like this pattern because it makes me think of a cowboy's bandana. And different from the Birch Creek bandana, this one uses a lot less yarn and is done up in a different way. This one is just a triangle that's knit in garter stitch, and you attach I-cord ties. I think that's a really fun way of doing one of these scarves if you don't want bulk at the back of your neck. You want to keep that coziness just at the front, especially if you're wearing a jacket that comes up really tight against your neck. I'm thinking of jean jackets that don't really have a lot of stretch and they have these really nice collars. It's kind of nice to have just a front scarf so you're not feeling like you've got too much bulk up and around your neck. The triangle shape and the ties also make it easy to style this, especially if you struggle with getting that perfect knot with the typical long skinny scarves. This one, you just tie it around the back of your neck, or you bring the ties to the front and you tie in the front, and you have that perfect triangle of a scarf because of the shaping of this one. I have the first of 3 very fun leaf-themed scarves next. This one is Mr. Tumnus's Leaf Scarf by Mari Tobita. I hope I pronounced correctly, and I do apologize if I did not. This one is such a cute little scarf. It uses so little yardage because you're just knitting a small little strip and then a couple of leaves. But that does not make this any less worthy of being a fun little scarf to make. I feel like this would also be a great pattern if you have a child in your life that wants to wear one of these little scarves. The leaf detail just gives it a lot of childlike whimsy, and I feel like it's a really fun way of making one of those little scarves for a child. But there is a child in all of us, and sometimes you're an adult who wants a very whimsical scarf. I can definitely see this being knitted up in a gorgeous forest green color and giving Hobbit vibes. The next pattern on my list is more of a grown-up way of doing a leaf-themed scarf. This is Falling Leaves Scarf and Shawl by Iris H. And I love this pattern. I love that lace detailing to create the shape of the leaf. I love how the edges of the shawl are waving in and out because of the way that you're creating those leaves. It just looks so sophisticated. And there's 2 sizes with this, and the scarf is the one that really stands out to me because you have that leaf detail across the whole body of the scarf. The shawl only has that as an edging and the rest is just plain garter. So the scarf is the one that really stands out to me. The next pattern on my list is the Distance Scarf DK by Olga Putano Designs. This is a really great cabled scarf that just has the most beautiful symmetry. I know a lot of these little scarves tend to only increase on one side and kind of give this asymmetrical trapezoid shape to them, which those are great too. But sometimes the type A person in me really wants symmetry, and you get this in this scarf. I really love how the cables grow from the outside and twist and turn all the way up. And there's 3 different sizes to this one, so you can make a tiny little head scarf, you can make a cute little neck scarf, or even more of a thicker neck scarf. This is also a great pattern if you want to practice cabling without a cable needle, because there's a lot of cables in this pattern. So if you want to give that a shot, this is a cute little pattern to try that out with few to little stakes. The next pattern on my list is a free pattern. This is Miss Marple Scarf by Suzanne SVV. I hope that's the way that I'm supposed to say this. I couldn't really find out another way of saying it. But this is a really fun garter scarf that, again, takes the guesswork out of how to tie these little scarves, because you're creating a loop on one end of the scarf. And I've actually knitted a scarf like this. I don't know if it's this exact one because I don't have it in my Ravelry projects anymore. And I ended up frogging that pattern because I didn't have enough yarn and I made it too short. So when I went to tie it around my neck, it was just right here and that was it. But if I was to do this pattern again, I would make it longer and I would have that crisscross happening probably down on my chest. So I have the bulk of the scarf right across my chest where I want most of that warmth. But the way that you do the loop is that after you do your first triangle for the bottom of the scarf, you then cast on twice as many stitches and then you break them off and you knit 2 sides up, straight up, and join them back together again. And those sections are done using a rib stitch so that it keeps it nice and squished in and really makes a cinched in look for where you connect the rest of your scarf. And I can attest that the end that you slip through does in fact stay put. It doesn't weasel its way out unless, you know, you're playing around with your scarf and you're making it come apart. So it is quite secure as well. So I love that pattern for this. Speaking again of symmetry, this next pattern is Woolly Cute Scarf by Colleen Kinnersley. I hope I pronounced correctly. Or Kellen Kinnersley. I do apologize if I got that incorrect. This is a beautiful symmetrical design. It's primarily a garter stitch scarf, but there is this spine of what looks like slip stitches going up the middle. But it's really neat because when the scarf is tied around the neck, it also kind of looks like that spine acts like a bit of a hinge and creates this beautiful movement and structure to the scarf that I really love. Of course, there's also some fun tassels, which I haven't shown yet on any of these other scarves, but theoretically you could add tassels to any of these little skinny scarves if you would like to. But I really feel like there's a lot of playful elements to this one with that structure and movement, and that's why I really like this one. The last pattern on my list is a free pattern, and this one is inspired by a television show character. This is Saroyan by El Abinante. I hope I pronounced correctly. I'm pretty sure I butchered that and I do apologize. This is based on a character from the show Bones. It's been a long time since I've watched Bones and I didn't really get into it very much when it came out, so I don't actually remember this character, but the scarf is designed based on Dr. Camille Saroyan. And I just think it's a beautiful scarf. This is the third of the leaf motif type scarves that I talked about earlier in this video. And this one I really love because it uses the leaf motif as the edging. And it just creates this beautiful decorative edge to an otherwise simple knitted scarf. So I love that about this one. And that wraps up my list of 20 more scarves that are not the Sophie scarf. I hope you found something in this video that you liked, and if you know someone else who might like this video, please go ahead and share it to them so that they can watch it as well. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much for joining me, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. While you're here, it would help my channel if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell icon to be notified for when my videos come out. I I'd also really love if you could comment below, let me know what your favorite pattern from this list was. There's a lot of different patterns in here, and I know there's something that will speak to everybody, so let me know your favorite in the comments below. I also have in the description box below a link to my wish list on Ravelry. If you feel like giving me a tip, you could buy me a pattern, but there's no pressure, it's only if you want to. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all take care and happy knitting!